Welcome to Let's Talk Possibility, episode 33 on the 21st of May. We are talking to Janet du Preez, who opened up her mouth and now is putting education into a box. Welcome to Let's Talk Possibility, where we talk about what's possible when we explore ideas, challenge thinking, and inspire action. Today, I'm Talana Simpson with Chris Dykes, and we have got Janet du Preez in studio with us. And she is a lady who's putting her passion into a box.
So Janet is a thought and ideas leader who has a master's in health sciences. She's involved in psychology and has an extensive experience in business as well.
She's quite a mix of
skills. And having spoken to her, a fascinating lady. We're speaking tonight. I've been chatting about a concept that she's initiated or talking about called the SCUBE. Is that pronounced correctly?
Well, that's the name we're looking at for the moment. It's short for School in a Cube.
Right.
Putting your passion in a box.
Putting passion in a box. Good. School in a cube. It's fascinating. Janet, can you tell us a bit more about what initiated this idea?
Okay. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Talana. Lovely to be here. I think one of the things I'm really passionate about is getting things to work better, making life more effective, making systems more effective. And I've spent a lot of time over the years looking at business, looking at South Africa, looking at communities where the resources are not what you and I might be used to.
Right, and there's certainly a lot of those communities.
Absolutely. And trying to figure out, how can we really address the very root issues at the heart of the systems? How can we get maximum shift at the bottom of the problem, as it were?
So it's like finding the leverage point, I always call it.
Absolutely, exactly.
Addressing
finding that point of leverage.
The root of the problem.
Exactly. And I think particularly some of the concerns and some of the issues that I'm referring to are issues of crime, issues of serious economic issues within the country, and then very particularly issues of education.
Sure.
So depending on which research you look at, up to 58% of children in this country will start school in grade 1 without having had any preschool education.
And how old would that typically be?
So children go to school legally, usually in the year that they turn 7.
Wow.
And we're talking about the age group prior to that. So government-funded education is compulsory from grade 1, but up until that age, there is no government-funded or very little government-funded education in terms of formal schooling, and there's no compulsory education. So it's not a requirement that you educate children before they actually go into formal school.
So there's a huge number of children that are effectively starting school with no grounding at all.
Well, the challenge really is that once they go into grade 1, they're expected to already have some skills. They're expected to be able to sit still in the classroom. They're expected to actually have some comprehension of the alphabet. They're expected to be able to count. There are a whole number of things that children actually need to be able to do before they go to school, which they have to learn somewhere.
And I'm sure if you start looking at the quality of the education system, a lot of the teachers, we know that there are problems involved. We look at the language and circumstances of the kids that are typically going to be affected by this. The issue just is compounded.
Huge. And I mean, there's a lot of talk going on around education. Every year when the matric results come out, we look and we're horrified at the results.
Absolutely.
My contention is that we can put as much emphasis and time and energy and money into teaching children maths and science, but if they don't have the very fundamental building blocks in place, in many cases we're wasting resources.
And possibly even just the fundamentals around the passion for learning and an interest and a desire.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But isn't there also more to that age before 7? It's quite a critical part of our brain's development and just the way we engage with the world.
Very much so. I think at the end of the day, what you're doing is you're laying the foundation. So from a psychology perspective, and maybe to explain it in this way, it's almost like you're putting on the glasses through which you're going to see the rest of the world. If you don't have those fundamentals in place, it's going to skew everything that you learn from then onwards. So getting it right in that first phase of life, I believe, is absolutely critical.
I had some friends of mine who are certainly be on the wealthier side of life. Their grandmother brought home some water-based paints recently, and these kids, probably 3, 4, 5 years old, and not too sure exactly, ended up painting the BMW with these paints, and they had a ball.
Yeah.
And I'm sure their minds were being stimulated. The colors were part of the process. And afterwards, when they had gone to bed, the BMW was just washed down with a hose pipe, and that kind of opportunity just does not happen.
Yeah. I think what you just illustrated, though, Chris, is in a sense the simplicity of dealing with this age group. Because you can take just about anything and create an educational product out of it. You can give children a packet of beans and they can learn from that.
Yeah.
And that's one of the principles that we want to actually inculcate into our proposed solution to this problem.
Right.
So
I've been doing some research, and it seems like there's a lot of emphasis on the building of early childhood development centers, but not too much emphasis on actual projects or processes. What are your thoughts? Is that an accurate reflection?
It certainly appears to be. Here's where I get a little bit off the wall in my thinking. We so often resort to doing things the way we've always done them.
Absolutely.
This is the system, stick to the system, and we think within the box and within the boundaries of the normal way of doing things. And I think that's all well and good. And I'm not saying for 1 minute that we should stop building formal early child care development centres. But I don't believe that that's going to address the problem quickly enough. And I also believe that there is really scope here to do some innovative thinking.
Absolutely.
And to come up with some faster solutions.
When you mentioned time and sort of having these buildings built, but I guess it's also a question of how many people are going to be impacted through centres that are being built.
Correct. And I think sometimes we get so hooked up on trying to do things correctly and properly according to the rules that we have, the unwritten rules that we have, or sometimes the written rules that we have, that hampers our thinking in terms of what other solutions are possible.
So you concretized, I think that's a fabulous word, you concretized the SCOOB, School in a Cube idea about a year or so ago as a possible solution to this childhood development issue. Can you tell us a bit more about the idea, how you came up, well, not so much we've talked about how you come up with it, but what you're trying to achieve with the idea?
Okay. So fundamentally, this is the issue. 58% of South African children and 67 million children worldwide who actually are in the same position. So what resources are available to possibly help address this issue? And one of the things that's certainly within South African communities that I've been involved in, one of the amazing resources we have is people within those communities who actually feel very passionately about the children getting a good education. As most of us are aware, particularly in South Africa, in our context, we have many children in these situations who are not being raised fundamentally or primarily by their parents, either as a result of AIDS or as a result of the fact that parents go to the urban centres to work. And so the children are caretaken by very often grannies, older siblings, aunties, etc., etc. And many of these women are literate. And I'm referring to women. It's not restricted to women. But many of them are literate. And if one could put the right resource into their hands, I believe that it's possible that they could actually provide this fundamental education.
And
to children.
there's almost like an army of these people. And if we talk about an army working against the scourge of illiteracy, maybe that's an interesting concept.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what, I know from my own experience and from having spoken to people involved in the field that there are many people out there with a passion, and they just need the right tool to be put into their hands.
So what would the basis of this SKU be?
So there are effectively 3 elements to the system. And the first element is a really detailed curriculum.
Which would then give these grannies, or these gorgors as we call them,
correct.
these
so it's
wonderful
a manual.
people.
It's a manual that really says, this is what you do on Monday morning from 8 until 9. This is what you do on Tuesday morning from 9 until 10, etc., etc.
Right.
So literally a step-by-step guide that would take them through a preschool preparation curriculum. And I need to clarify that term curriculum, because yes, there is an early childhood development curriculum, foundation phase curriculum, developed by the government, approved by the government, but it's not detailed.
Okay.
It says this is what we're wanting to achieve, this is what we want to teach the children,
Yeah.
but it doesn't go into the minute detail of what do I actually do. And I believe, as I say, that with the help of hopefully some volunteers from the teaching community, that we can develop a curriculum that is detailed enough for somebody with a fundamental literacy level to be able to do this.
Cool. I suppose these people, I mean, there is so much passion and there is so much love around that it's really it's a wonderful opportunity for them to also get involved in the lives of these children.
Especially if they have a passion for the education of the kids they're working with.
Absolutely.
So part of it is having the detailed syllabus.
Correct.
And obviously then I would think the tools, or, you know, the games, the toys, because a lot of that kind of education is with
absolutely
blocks and colours and all of that. What I found really interesting about your story is that you've had this idea for a while, and you said you put it on the back burner.
Yes.
And then a couple of weeks ago, we actually had on our show, Chris, I don't know if you remember this, we
Leslie.
had Leslie Williams of The Hub, episode 30, if anyone wants to go and listen. We were talking about collaboration, and she was telling us about an event that they had where you had to go and pitch an idea. And you actually went to that event and pitched this idea that you'd had on the back burner. And that's, I think, what's really kick-started it. It's given it a lot more legs than that.
It's a wonderful collaboration, an international collaboration, actually.
Absolutely.
Because you got to be part of that group that where there was a South African link to Netherlands.
Correct.
To one of the hubs there.
Correct. So
tell us a little bit about that.
Yes.
I mean, that just to me is such an exciting collaboration.
It was an amazing experience. Chris was actually there, and
it's quite a privilege, really.
It was earlier this week.
Yes.
Losing track of time. Last week.
Yeah.
We linked up online with the Hub Amsterdam, and we had a brainstorm session where we pitched the idea of the what we were then terming the school in a box to the whole group, both Johannesburg and Amsterdam, and we asked them to brainstorm ideas around funding and around resourcing this idea. And they came up with some incredible things.
Wonderful
But
ideas.
it was just so exciting. And what for me is always amazing, as soon as you do something like this, is what comes out of the woodwork.
You know,
and the people who get passionate about being involved.
And there was lots of passion. You know, one of the ideas that I just thought was magnificent was one of the ladies suggested that you could get some of the kids in the wealthier schools as a school project to create colouring in pictures, either by tracing them or by drawing pictures themselves, which could then be included in the boxes for the kids as part of the Scoop project to colour in at a later point. Yeah. And isn't this a kind of win-win scenario, just real synergies, where we're using a resource and in the process using it as a learning opportunity?
I think one of the things that really came out of that brainstorm session for me was a reinforcement of what I have believed, is that so often educational products are brightly coloured, uber fancy, coming from overseas. We actually have very few locally produced educational products. They don't have to be like that. Like I said, children learn with beans.
A bag of beans.
We can create some products that are suited to the economic group that we're dealing with that will have phenomenal educational value and that can be produced at far less cost than the kind of stuff that we're putting into the mainline schools.
I guess.
And we just had a little boy at our house just the other weekend, and we had some cardboard boxes lying around, and he entertained himself and learned so much about trying to make cardboard boxes into different things and building castles and I don't know what else he built. So yes, there's so much you can do with what's lying around.
I mean, just when you talked about the bag of beans, I was thinking it could even be that resources are used from within the communities. So instead of putting a bag of beans into the box, it's a case of, well, as one of the projects, create the bag of beans.
Exactly.
So there's a bit of ownership there as well, and a bit of involvement, and possibly even a learning opportunity in its own right.
Well, I mean, another idea that came out of the brainstorm the other day was the idea of also engaging with disabled people in the community to help with packing the boxes.
Yeah, wow.
So there have been some wonderful ideas that have come.
So,
great.
So I think that you had this idea a while ago. Something sparked it off when we got to do that event with the hub or the Converse or something. Anyway,
It was called Culture Shift.
Culture Shift.
Yes.
You did that there. You got the opportunity then through the hub to have that collaboration. So how does it feel then to have an idea that you've had there for so long and it's just been almost like waiting? Suddenly now the time just seems to be of the essence, or what's the word?
Honestly, terrifying. and I think I said this at the brainstorm the other night, Chris. This is a go big or go home idea.
Absolutely.
It's not something that you're just going to do with a couple of people in the backyard and, okay, well, something happened. If we're going to do this, it's got to happen, and it's got to happen on a big scale.
It's not about thousands of people. It's about tens of thousands, possibly even hundreds of thousands of people.
Maybe even those millions.
Possibly, yes.
You know, and it's very exciting, but also terrifying.
So what's keeping you then? What's getting you to now, because that's been on the back burner, to now actually face that fear and that excitement?
I opened my mouth, I said something, and a whole bunch of people got excited. And I think what I said at the brainstorm the other night was I was so encouraged and inspired by the positive response from people who said, Janet, we're actually keen to get involved in this. Scary thought. Because you know what? If other people are going to get on board and be committed, that places an amazing responsibility to say, you can't just, this isn't play. This is for real. And it's got to happen.
Certainly, for me, tremendously exciting to watch the passion and the interest of the guys from the Netherlands and how they got involved and how interested they were effectively in a people that they, it's in a different continent. It's in a different hemisphere. And here they were really actively interested in making a personal difference on their own.
Absolutely.
Well, in their own personal way.
Yeah. There were 4 names of people who were sent to me afterwards who wished to be involved going forward.
Great.
But Talana, I didn't answer that entirely correctly. I think the real thing is to say, if this can make a difference, if this is a possible solution to the problem, it has to happen. I don't have to do it, but it has to happen. And if I can be a part of making it happen, then I need to do it.
So what you're saying effectively, and certainly what I heard you saying before, is that this is not an idea that you're trying to hold on to. It's an idea that you're putting out there to say, what can we do to make this a reality? Because if it does become a reality, the potential consequences, the potential benefits are massive.
Yeah. Chris, spot on. This is not about me. This is very simply saying, is it an idea that can work? If so, how can we all get on board and make it happen?
Well, perhaps at this point, it might be interesting to start talking about what are some of the things that anybody that is interested in this type of project can get involved in. What is it that people can do? What are you looking for? Where is the help that is needed?
Okay. So what I'm going to maybe do is just say this is how I envisage things rolling out initially, and then I'll become a lot more specific. So right now we're needing to just develop an initial tentative funding model.
And what would that initial tentative funding model address?
Probably the next things that I'm going to, to suggest.
Okay.
But first, as we were discussing the other night, we really need to be able to fund a project manager to take ownership.
Okay.
That would be the first thing.
Yes.
We then need to obtain seed funding for project management, for research, for product development, and for marketing.
Okay, and the product development would be things like the syllabus that you talked about.
The curriculum and the syllabus.
The beanbags.
And the equipment.
And the equipment,
and
right.
what's going in the box.
In the box. In the cube.
In the cube.
Right.
We need to spec, source, and develop the required equipment for the envisaged curriculum.
Okay.
We have to obviously source that or create that curriculum. And we've got some ideas around crowdsourcing for that. We have to identify suitable volunteer teachers in a test community.
Mm-hmm.
We probably already have that.
Yes.
We've got somebody who came forward at the brainstorm and said that. And then we've obviously got to provide some boxes to that community to enable them to run a pilot study. And then we need to develop support hubs. We haven't even talked about that. That's another whole aspect of it, is to create the right kind of support and training structure. And we're looking at possibly working with an organization called Kotlins.
Right.
Based on something they're already doing, which is probably just a whole different discussion. And then we need to tweak the product and roll the thing out. In terms of real practical things, the first thing to say would be, if anybody is particularly interested, would be to contact me directly.
Possibly as one of the crowd, or in what sense?
A whole lot of different capacities. So essentially, I think we're looking for three groups of people. The first would be what I would call volunteers.
Okay.
And two particular areas where people could volunteer would be if they have experience and qualifications in the early childhood development area as educators.
Okay.
We are looking specifically for experienced teachers who are prepared to design a week's curriculum or syllabus for us, who will give us all the lesson plans in the kind of detail that we require.
Okay.
If we find 40 people, we've got a syllabus for a year.
Wow. Isn't that amazing to think 40 people can create an entire syllabus?
That's it. And I mean, that could probably be done in a weekend.
Wow.
By each of those people. So that would be the first thing.
Okay.
We would probably also require some designers, people with graphic design type experience and background, to be able to help us to develop the colouring books we were talking about and those kind of aspects of the product. And again, if we can find enough volunteers to do that just certainly would save an enormous amount. And we'll look at, obviously, other creative things like the children drawing pictures and things. We need donors. And again, there are two particular areas of donation. One would be equipment.
Sure.
So if there are corporates who provide, who manufacture erasers, for example,
or beanbags.
Or beanbags. Bags of beans. Those kind of donations would obviously be very gratefully received. And then a different kind of donation is really in terms of the service of marketing. And just to give an example of how marketers could potentially be involved in this project, we have recognized that to get information out to these communities, one of the ways that we could do that would be to, for example, put adverts on the side of milk boxes or milk cartons. And there is enormous possibility here for collaboration on in terms of marketing. Sponsors to possibly put their brands onto the boxes. Huge options in terms of partnering with marketing.
I guess on an individual level, there's a lot of opportunities to sort of engage with schools and kids within the schools. So we talk about the drawing of pictures.
Exactly.
And it's a very fulfilling. I think it's a wonderful project to think about the difference that it makes on a very small life.
Incredible. And then the last area or the last group of people would be funders. So people who are prepared to open their checkbooks.
And you say that we've actually had, Mongisi just made a suggestion in the chat here, is have you thought of funding it via something like Kickstarter.com, so actually using crowdfunding?
That was one of the solutions that came up in in the brainstorm.
Yeah,
the other
because
day, so.
that's, I mean, like, I think, as you say, there's such an interest. So many people have an interest in education, because I think we know that education makes such a difference to the world.
Absolutely.
That if, a couple of people could put their couple of dollars each towards something, you might get a lot of, support.
Something that I thought was really fascinating coming out of the international discussion that was facilitated was the fact that the guys in the Netherlands were far more orientated towards crowdfunding as an option than the South African people.
Yeah.
And possibly that's an indication of the fact that we haven't caught on to this trend yet, and we haven't taken full advantage of it yet.
It's just starting in
so maybe this is the kind of project that can really start putting crowdfunding on the map here in the country.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because Evely.com there's two South Africans in Cape Town that started our version of crowdsourcing crowdfunding. Which is also very exciting. So, Grace,
cool.
So there's a whole lot of ways that people who want to get involved to help you with your little idea that was sitting on the back burner until you opened your mouth.
Absolutely.
Everyone wants to collaborate. And so what's one way that people can get hold of you then that wants to?
Best way to get hold of me is via email. I'm an email freak.
So do you want to get that out?
And the email address for this project would be busykids@toolsofgreatness.co.za. And I'll give you how to spell that. It's BZIKDZ at toolsofgreatness, or one word, .co.za, or alternately just Janet at toolsofgreatness.co.za.
All right.
So pop an email if anyone is interested has some more ideas and wants to collaborate. I think it's a great idea.
Or even if you just want to find out a bit more about the project and you need a bit more detail.
Oh, we got one more question. Let's quickly fit in one more question that's just come through. What about once you've got the first round of funding? Mongezi is asking, how do you ensure that the project will be sustainable apart from
that is a huge question.
Donations and sponsorships.
That is a huge question, and I don't have a definitive answer at this stage. We obviously are looking at the sort of collaborative marketing idea. A couple of ideas again that came out of the brainstorm was people buying products in the Netherlands and portion of those funds going towards the thing. The reality is that the community we are dealing with are very poor. They spend their money fundamentally on day-to-day living needs, and it's always going to be a product that's in some ways going to need to be subsidized.
But you never know, maybe just by educating them on the value of education, as you say, you can use stuff that's around. Yeah. It's sometimes even it's just the way you engage with children at that age that can have an impact. Yeah. So if you just open, we say the Googles, the granny's eyes, they would hopefully pass on. So,
and look, certainly, I mean, other ideas that have been put out are, once these women are able to, they've learned some skills, they potentially could start schools. So there are certainly ideas around how this could become an entrepreneurial venture.
Absolutely.
The starting point is testing it out.
Yeah. Building a bit of momentum.
That first box.
But perhaps even looking at a need in the wealthier communities. There's no reason why there aren't parents who can afford this that have recognized that their children do need a bit of extra stimulation, and going into some of the more expensive options is perhaps not feasible. And so this could be something that's seen as a sort of a middle of the line option that's really good, and in principle that starts to fund the guys that don't have the money.
Correct. Yeah. There are lots of options, and we're just not quite there yet. I think as you said,
get the ball rolling.
Let's get it going, and I'm sure that
I wish you
other
all the
ideas
best.
will emerge.
All the best.
Excellent.
So, if you're listening and you had an idea that you put on the back burner and then you started to speak out about it and it's turning now upside down, do get in touch with us and tell us more about it on our Facebook page or on Twitter, which is @LTPossibility. Otherwise, don't just think it.
Do it.